another castle called Lowen something Castle. I can't pronounce it. I'm sorry, but I'm going to take a quick tour there. Legend Park, and then we're going to go to Rothenberg. Alright, we finally arrived at the castle. Well, we're not at the castle yet, but we're close. We're just getting off the bus and we're going to walk over there.
25 cents per
Have you here?
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. So, would you like to see a palace?
Yes.
Would you like to learn about the difference of a palace and a castle?
Yes.
Please follow me. I really will.
If I can have back to the middle of town.
I know it is.
It's not that far from the river either. I mean, it's a park. We are walking through a huge park. I know, walk around.
Hyde Park. Hyde Park?
I think it matters.
Is that the park that's in front of the Buckingham Palace?
I can't remember.
That's why I was trying to remember what was the name of the park. Yeah.
It was really pretty.
That was smart that you got in the castle.
I figured it out in the end, but Riley sorry, Reagan.
Reagan.
Because
It
Mike
makes
was
sense when
talking
you
about
think of it. I know.
Mike was like, the only thing I was like, we're going to a place called Kassel, and it's a castle.
I know.
But if you'd said it in German, it would have been like Kassel to the town, and Schuster to the actual castle.
I know.
Saying that tonight, and I would have been like, oh, that's what it is.
On the other reading that the art was sold, it's in that. They have, and they, because they figured they wouldn't buy it.
Yeah, they were like, oh, you know,
Heritage Center.
it's too beautiful.
There was also the patch, you know that patch. And they were essentially like,
That's better.
all right, go get it. I said, we don't have it.
Yeah, you've been to Waldeck. How did you like it?
Really liked it.
And they call it a castle, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They call it that.
They call it that. What would you call it?
A fort.
A fort. And what's the difference between a fort and a castle?
A castle, well, I know a palace and a castle and a fort are all different things.
Yeah.
Forts are primarily for just strict defense.
Yes.
Castles are typically, this is more of a guess, for military higher ups to view battles and kind of organize troops and garrison people. The palaces are for only like royals and living, and you have bigger windows and it's more grand and stuff like that.
It's even more complicated.
More
but
complicated.
thank you for the introduction.
I tried.
Yeah, it was really good because
Oh, thanks.
all three of them, they actually come from the Roman times, like 2,000 years ago. And in the medieval times, they started to build castles here. And the medieval times were really from 500 up to 1500 past after Christ. And here the castles were normally up on the highest point to overview the whole area. And that's what you have in Waldeck. Because in the medieval times they didn't have the lakes there, but it was up on the highest point. And in the castles there lived not only the royalty but also the gentry and the knights, and they were in charge of protecting the area, and that was the reason they had them up on the highest point, so they could see who was coming.
Right.
And since the end of the medieval times, from the Renaissance on, they started to build palaces, and palaces don't have walls around them, so they were really there to represent. But from the castles, the forts derived, and that was really for the military.
Yeah.
You know, so probably the most important thing is here in Germany, the castles were before the palaces. But just to confuse you a little bit, you have been.
Stop behind. I ran out.
You're taller.
I don't know, you're good.
Okay.
You were fine.
Behind me.
1, 2, 3.
Really? Were you
Why do
shaking?
you take a shot? 1, 2, 3.
Mike, move slightly to your right. Slightly to your right. Yeah, exactly. Then you're hiding the car behind.
You got yourself a job.
Creative positioning.
Okay, let's.
Oh.
More cameras.
Watch out, when you use my camera, you're gonna be closer. I don't know why.
Camera, it's amazing.
You like it too much.
Watch out, Mario. Watch out, it'll be gone.
How about you?
Beautiful.
Oh, you good. Wait. Join. I'm gonna take photos.
Okay.
One more.
Oh, this is beautiful. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
All right, cool.
Yeah, you always take photo and then by the time
They represented their country, you know, and therefore they had to represent their wealth and how sophisticated they were. And so they always had a connection to the antique times as well. And everything had to show the wealth of the country. So even a little palace, you know, summer house you could say, had to show that. And the most important thing of a palace is the middle part. It's called Port de Logis. And then you have the side wings, and then you have the watch houses, the guard houses. And so you can see the guard houses are small, and then the side wings get bigger, but the middle part is the highest. You know? Even with so the important thing was when important people came, not working people. They had to go to the wings, but important people like other royalties. They came here by coach, and the coach just waited in front of the door, and then they entered through the main door, and then they were in one of the official rooms that was called the entry hall, and that had to be represented. And then at that time, the palaces are more or less similar, because behind the door, behind the entry hall, you have the dining room, and one store up, you have the dancing floor. And these are huge rooms. And then to the left, you have private apartments. To the left, downstairs, it used to be the private apartment of the Landgraf with 2 rooms, the bedroom, a small room which was called the cabinet, which was the most private room, and then also dressing rooms and rooms for the servant. And on the other side, for visitors, nearly the same apartment, but not just the same, because the ruler had to represent it more. Upstairs it was called the Belle Etage, Belle because the ladies are beautiful, so that was for the ladies. To the left for the wife of the Landgraf, and to the right for visitors. And when we will enter the palace in about 20 minutes, we will walk through the rooms, and then you can see in the Rococo everything was very, very playful, and so it's just fantastic to walk through the rooms. There are lots of details. I will show them to you, but you will forget about it because it's just so impressive, you know, that you just remember, wow, that was something, you know. And to the left, from you to the left, the wing, that's where the servants lived. There were other apartments for visitors that were not so famous, and we also have the little church in there. And to the right, we had the silver chamber. Silver chamber means they had a lot of not only porcelain and china, but also things made out of silver, and they were stored in the silver room. And they also have an authentic kitchen from the time 250 years ago, and we will visit that. But because at that time it was really fashionable to have the palace in a beautiful garden, because it was always between natural and culture. We will see how it's situated in the park, and then we just walk around and have a look at the park.
Look at the dog. All right. We say hi to Bowser. Good morning, Bowser.
Guten Morgen.
It's cute. Where went this? Here?
Well, you had a good journey.
Yes.
Wonderful. So, well, maybe you would see the park first a little bit, or stay in time. Yeah, Lady Anne, would you mind to join us? Show us your beautiful park? Yeah, I would be lucky. Yeah, so let's go. Because I already told them about your palace, about the rooms and apartments. It's beautiful. I said it's just a little summer house. They should come to your neighborhood.
Summer house.
All right. Okay. So, follow us.
There's that one place and also what's the name when we buy that store? There's dogs over there. Look at Dawson's Ranch. Where is it? I saw our friend Priscilla running over there. Oh, come back. Where you go? Go over there, see? Yeah. One on the right and then that one?
I think so.
They're back home.
You notice you don't see as many German Shepherds. They do dogs. Dogs
They take a lot of space.
I know.
So on the first one, we gotta tell you.
He is excited. They're so cute. Where is this?
I was gonna turn that one. One is better than the other one.
They look like combo dogs because
They're a combination of a
Mauser Dachshund.
Walking around all by himself. He was an old graying Scotty dog. And I tried to reach down and pet him a little bit, and I like kind of gently brushed his fur, and he went.
He didn't bite you, alright?
No, he was just grumping.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Yeah, exactly. You get old and grumpy, he's like a grumpy old man. He even stopped. He's just like. Kept on trotting along. Yeah. So he wasn't even like growling, he was just sort of like rumbling a little bit. He was an old gray Scotty dog flying past. He didn't have an apparent owner or anything. He was just walking along the side of the path. I was like, hey buddy! And I like went to pet him a little bit. He's like, just kept walking along.
Like Taurus.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not being here.
He's like,
Don't want your pets.
he's acting like an old human.
Yeah. He was a grumpy old man.
They made a movie, remember?
I named him I nicknamed him Seamus. So I was like, there goes Seamus.
Do you have any dogs?
I do. I have 2 little dogs. They're about big each. They're yeah, sort of. We're not entirely sure. We got them from an adoption place that's supposed to be poodle mixes. We don't know if they're actually poodle. But they are definitely mixed. Like Norfolk Terrier.
You have a picture of him?
Yeah.
I have a picture of the word up too.
We have 5 cats and 2 dogs.
You saw our cats on the video. Remember the video?
Yeah.
Maybe.
On the left there, that's Jack from Norfolk Rosie is a terrible girl. She's always angry all the time.
You ready?
Sweater on.
Ready for Rococo
She gets cold and puts sweaters on her. And she hates it. And she also hates being picked up. So that picture was when we put a sweater on her and picked her up.
Oh no, so that's not a good photo.
So then she freezes up.
Wir müssen mal gucken. Ich glaube, die meisten haben ja keine Taschen. Ich glaube, ich habe eine.
One's more old than the other.
Oh.
They're cute, your babies.
Is this real gold?
It's gilded, yes.
It's real gold?
Old players are. I mean, on top. They do in Peru, a lot of places.
No, inside is. Inside is
Oh, can you see the pictures, Jean?
Try to find it.
Which dogs? The old dogs were so cute. I could just kiss them. They're grumping, you can tell.
Ja. Ich muss meine auch einschließen. Ich muss mal gucken.
That's what she's like 10. She's like,
Yeah, but at least that's been
it might be a profile. I don't know. They keep making sure they're Tyson for something.
Paul Howard won't let you in with purse. Yeah, Paul Howard they wouldn't let you in with the purse. They wouldn't let you in with the purse of Paul Howard. You had to put it in the locker.
What do you need?
Why are you grumping?
Put it back in, you get to your
I like the dog. That one man. You weren't after that.
They're in their native land.
Who else from here? Party's from England.
Yes.
Our cousin's from China.
Yes. Okay.
And, well, Burma's from Burma, right?
I didn't know you were on your way.
I didn't either.
Okay, adventures. Just a reminder, pictures are not allowed. So unfortunately.
So that wasn't exactly the castle.
It was a palace.
Yeah, I thought that was.
Tell them the difference. Chiline, tell them the difference between a castle and a palace.
Castle is kind of a combination. Well, it's kind of the pinnacle place in the valley or area where you look down, and it's kind of a fortification and where nobility stayed. While the palace is just where nobility stays. It doesn't have any walls or anything. But yeah, that was a palace that we saw inside. I made the mistake of saying we were going to Kassel right now.
I know.
But yeah, we're going to the castle now, and we're not going to see the inside of that. We're just going to get outside, but we're still going to get a tour. So we're going back to the bus. Alright, so now we've arrived at Rothenberg Park. We'll walk to the castle, probably park a little bit. Let's do lunch nearby, but we're probably not going to stop for lunch. We're probably going to go to the Herzog monument. Not so sure. We'll find out.
Where's our cave on now?
Over here is a map of the park. I don't know exactly where we are on here. Normally a map says you are here, but I don't see where it says you are here. Oh, group's leaving. Gotta follow. No time to chat. This must be the museum over here. Supposed to be a mountainous part.
What is it?
Yeah. This must be the museum area.
I should probably know.
So if we're gonna walk there.
What? I don't know. Any battles
So
over
now
there?
we're here at the park of Wilhelmshöhe, and that's the biggest hill park. It's more than 245 hectares big. So over here everything is a bit bigger than in Wilhelmsthal. And here you see the greenhouse that was built in 1826. And here the exotic plants or the plants go into the greenhouse in the winter months. And only at the moment they get the plants and the pots out and plant them here in the park. For example, these little trees, they are put into the soil with the pots. And just in October, when it gets cold again, they just get them out. You have here beautiful old trees that are more than 200 years old. And won't be long when they will put the flowers into the flower beds, and then it looks just like around the year 1900. And at that time, the park and the palace used to be one of the summer residences of the German Kaisers. Especially the last one really liked to come here in summer for 2 weeks in August.
I wonder if you look at us like we should know the answer to that question.
No, they're 85.
I love this stuff.
It's like a good place to stop and take a photo.
We should have had the kids try to reach around the big tree trunk back.
Oh, yeah.
I was just going to say.
Und der Rest wird weggespült.
As a ruin of a Roman water pipe. So, because here in the park the idea is also man creates something and nature takes it back. And we have the water festivals here, and then the water gushes down 30 meters down over the cascades into the fountain pond. So when we have the water festivals on, it looks really fantastic. And it was all built just to demonstrate how sophisticated and wealthy these local leaders are.
Why is Hercules on the top of that?
Oh,
okay, okay. I don't think he's German.
He's Greek.
And then the Romans came along and ooh, let's be Greeks. And then they basically took everything that Greece ever made. And then the Romans came and tried to invade Germany. People were tried. And the Germans and Romans kind of traded off.
Wow, they're doing a lot of construction.
And it stands there in a height of about 525 meters above sea level. The lowest point in the city is just 140 meters above sea level. And there is a straight line into the city. The only thing that interrupts the line is the palace, but later we will see this straight X into the city. And around the year 1700, one of the local rulers, his name was Karl, he had the idea to put the monument up there and later the statue of Hercules, because Hercules is a Greek hero. His father was Zeus, his mother a queen, and in the Baroque times he was a symbol for strength and eternity, and the local ruler wanted to be remembered for all times. So he got this idea to put that up on the highest point, and even nowadays the first thing of Kassel you see is the statue of Hercules, you know, and it's made out of thin layers of copper, and they made the pieces down in the city and they put everything together up there, and that was technically a fantastic thing in the 300 years. Hercules is standing there leaning onto a club which he made himself, at least that's what the Greek mythology tells us. Over the club is the skin of the Nemean lion which he killed, and before that nobody was able to kill it. And very important, he's hiding something in his right hand behind his back, and these are the 3 apples of the Hesperies. They were stolen for him by Atlas, and these golden apples promise everlasting youth and strength, and that's probably the reason he's still standing there after 300 years and he still looks good. But these golden apples, in the Baroque times they thought the golden apples were actually the lemons, and so they put the orangerie down 5 kilometers from here in the eastern part, and in the orangerie they also had lemons, because lemons were very exotic. And then they made a straight X of 6 kilometers long up to the Hercules, and Hercules is standing there with the golden apples which they thought were the lemons.
in the most western part of the city, because the apples were taken for him in the most western garden of the Greek Rome. And that was something completely new, and I think for that the local ruler should have got the title of an elector. He didn't succeed, but we can use all this nowadays for free, and I think that's fantastic. And in summer, twice a week, we have the water festivals here, and then on this little island we have a more than 50-meter high fountain, and that doesn't work with pumping, but only through the gravity of the place, because they fill up about 600-meter long pipe, and when they pull away the lid here from a certain distance, there's so much pressure on the pipe that they create a more than 50-meter high fountain, and then the fountain is so high that you can't see Hercules behind it. Yeah. And at the moment we have a lot of renovation going on, and that's the reason to see the trades, but we have to restore it because it's our culture. Would you like to take a photo here? And then we will go to the restaurant.
Yeah. Really? Yes. Look at the pretty flower.
Yeah, there's somebody in my grade that can move one eye to the left and get the guy some birds.
Isn't that pretty? That's what I want in my backyard.
That is creepy.
Look, yeah, get dog. Get dog.
Do you want one?
Yeah.
When the fall comes, you are welcome to come to my house and pick oranges and grapefruits. That works. Pick those and grow, no problem.
That's not appropriate.
You're making it.
Hey, okay. Well, how's the connection to that? How do we connect those two?
I think it would take 38 minutes to walk around this park.
I don't know. I don't get lost here.
Big, yeah. And who are the strongest? Yeah.
I'm recording.
There was a loser. No. I'd be a loser too. Pretty there.
walking around the museum. I'm not gonna go in. Not on this trip. Got other things to do. Still haven't been to the castle. We're gonna get lunch first, apparently. That's alright. A lot of little ponds around and flowers. They say it's this park that we're currently in, the Wilhelmers Park thing. Yeah, I can't pronounce German words. The largest mountainous park in Europe. I don't know if that's true, but I'm taking them at their word. Looks like our guide has stopped up ahead to either explain something or just to make sure everybody's not lost. Let's take some pictures of the pond.
You can also get people walking.
Yeah, but now we have a lot of wildlife here. We have swans here, ducks, all sorts of things. And it's just starting that the roses here are starting to grow. Because look over there, we have an island with the roses with lots of different species of roses. But I think at the moment you're more up to schnitzel, is that right? So you move on
We
to
prefer schnitzel to roses, yeah. No?
It's a tough. Depends on the time of day.
That's also true.
because it's so easy here, you know, you're allowed to take off and get restrictions aren't
Get her come out of her team. Yeah.
Wait, so is that the castle?
You can ask the lady, she's right here.
So this is a castle.
How they would never do that.
This is a palace. This is a palace.
Palace.
That's just the same thing we saw from the other side.
Okay.
Oh. But
That's the palace of
Yeah,
Windsor.
I saw two things on the map. One was a museum, I think, and then one was a
The Lion Castle. The Lion Castle is on top of the hill, but I couldn't show it to you because there are lots of cranes there at the moment because they're just restoring it, and it really looks like Fort Knox.
Yeah, but you can't see the inside anyway, right? Or can you?
You can see it at special points, but today I didn't want to show it because
it's too busy and stuff.
yeah, and it doesn't look good, you know. But that's the Lion Castle. But that's interesting because it was only built 200 years ago. It's really a fake castle.
Oh.
Boy Scout troop.
So here's the backside from the Palace of Wilhelmshöhe, and from here into the city you can see it's a straight line. It's our main boulevard, Wilhelmshöhe, the Boulevard of Wilhelmshöhe, and just where the road begins, that's where the restaurant is, and that's where the schnitzel are waiting. And you know, in winter the school classes come and they do tobogganing here.
Oh wow! Fun. That's fun. I mean, if you can do it.
The cold? You like the cold?
I'm not gonna be out.
Alright, so we're actually leaving the park now because apparently the castle itself was closed due to construction issues. So we're not gonna be able to see even the outside of it apparently because it just has a bunch of cranes around it, similar to we saw with the Hercules statue. Just more so, I guess. So I guess our tour was around the palace, not actually inside it, because I'm guessing that's, well, I'm guessing, yeah, I know, but I'm guessing that's there'll be a lot to see, so just take up all our day, or that it's just not ready itself. Maybe it's just a bad time of year to come to the park, apparently, I don't know. But now we're heading out of the park down this road to see. Down the road, that's where we were yesterday, the town of Kassel. That's heading towards the actual town. This is the park on the outskirts of Kassel. We were trying to catch a tram yesterday to come to this park, but then we found out we were going here today anyway, so we decided against that. Plus it was later in the day, so we didn't have time. But yeah, down that street though, you can, hopefully we'll get a good view. It gives this nice shot down this road. You can see the palace and the Hercules statue right behind it because it's on such a high hill behind it. So hopefully we'll get another shot of that, because yesterday I took a few pictures and they just didn't come out because the sun was behind the statue, so you couldn't get any detail at all out of it. So we'll see if we can get that or not. But yeah, we're going to lunch right now. We're probably not going to eat lunch, of course, but we can maybe get some ice cream. So we'll see. So here we are near the road, near the end of the park. We're still going to lunch. As you can see, there's a beautiful shot, which I took pictures of course, of the museum in line with the Hercules statue, which I really don't want to get a close-up of, so I'm not going to zoom that in close in. But you can see they cut a perfect line in the trees and pathways so you can get a perfect shot, which is nice. It's beautiful. I wanted to make sure I got that on camera as well as photos of it. So we're still walking away towards lunch, as I said. May get a video before we get to lunch, may not. We'll see if we see anything of importance along the way. Crossing the road. Just want to make sure I get this narration in so I can break up more evenly the events of the day. Because otherwise, if I take videos of it, we're not going to know what order these things are in because we're just hopping from place to place. So we'll see. And I'm out. So here's where we're getting lunch for the day. Well, the other guys are probably just gonna eat ice cream. It was just a little farther down the road, which isn't much of a walk. And then there's an outdoor amphitheater of some kind. Guessing they have events at night. Well, and no lights, so maybe not at night, but maybe they set them up. Nice little outdoor seating, as usual in Germany.
Might be sitting. So any of those two you can sit.
Just like a question, is there any gelato nearby that we can walk to?
Walk to, I don't think so. Let me double check with the owner. Maybe he has an insight.
Thank you.
and look around. It's hot in here.
I'll ask for bitter lemon.
Yes, for a bitter lemon, Sheen.
You could also say chocolate.
Alright. So we're done with lunch. Or ice cream. We went down the road a bit.
Because you're so close.
800 meters down the road and came back.
That's also true a lot of
But now we're getting back on the bus and we're going to Rothenberg, or they say it a little differently, but Rothenberg looks like to me. So.
I don't know if that counts, but I love you so dearly. I think I can get something for you. I'll go shopping. I'll buy you something.
Can you get me something sweet?
Something sweet.
Yes.
I don't want you to have too much sugar.
Something sweet.
Okay, something sweet. Okay.
Computer game.
Okay, I'll get you something sweet. Okay, I'll be right back.
Oh,
What?
can you bring me a toy, please?
A toy too? You are so greedy.
Greedy? You saw what? No.
I never buy you anything, huh? So you want something sweet? You want a toy? That's okay, I'll see what What else?
I want a surprise.
A surprise too. So he wants something sweet, a toy, and a surprise. You are No, I don't want you to cry. You're lucky. I love you so much. I will do my best, okay? I will go shopping now.
I will play along with you.
Okay. Please don't burn down the house while I go shopping.
He's actually play video games.
And it's a surprise because they're never the same.
Andy, I'm back.
Mommy, you have three things.
The three things. What were the three?
I want something sweet.
Something sweet.
And a toy and a surprise.
And the toy. You know, it's your lucky day.
Kinder.
I actually found 3 in 1.
Oh,
I got you a Kinder Yes, can you open?
Oh, these are summer edition.
Summer edition.
edition.
Yay! We want to see what is it. How is it possible? There's something sweet, a toy, and a surprise in there.
Oh, look, they've redesigned it.
Here is the sweet. Oh, I love the
Sweet.
sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, they redesigned it. They're different now.
Uh-oh, sugar rush.
Oh, and a surprise.
What is it? It's a toy. It's a toy. You have to put it together. Okay, you can put it together later. So
Okay, I'll play
yes.
some computer games.
Okay.
Yeah, you need
We have Kinder Joy for everyone, but just wanted to explain what we actually did. We created the commercial. There's actually a commercial. I'm not sure, do they still play it?
the commercial.
But in the past, when we were kids,
Yeah,
that's
right.
what the commercial was on TV. So you want something sweet, a toy, and a surprise. And you get all those 3 things in a little egg. And so the Kinder Joy is just the summer version because we don't want the chocolate to melt. Or the Kinder doesn't want the chocolate to melt. So it used to always be just the egg. So the egg was the chocolate with just foil around it. And that would melt in the summer. So now you scoop it out. Yes, and then there are always additions, so you can actually, when you open it, you might either have a toy that you have to put together, or you have a collectible. So when you were a kid, like when I was a kid, I collected those, and there would be, I think 7 of each edition, so it would be like 7 different really cute penguins, for example, for a month. The next month there would maybe be dinosaurs or things like that. So you would collect them and frame them, and yeah, so we'll see if anybody has a collectible. And there was even a Disney edition last year. They had little Disney collectibles. Yeah, so go ahead, everybody will have one.
That's the universal.
Wir haben langsam Geld reingetan. Noch 20 Schritt. Wir werden 28. Nee, ich hatte 70, sind wir schon drüber.
Anything to declare? Yeah, we have converted.
There, this is perfect. Okay. Okay.
Okay, that's weird. A little bit of press the top and the clean the toilet.
Yes, so we'll be handing these out. Make sure you have them. Gives you 3% and then also tells you on here about the shipping. So I highly recommend the shipping. It's really inexpensive and hassle-free. Okay. Then, where should we eat tonight? So later on when you get your maps, we can sit down with you and point out a few things. But one thing we always recommend, it's called Reichsküchenmeister. Can you repeat, please? Oh, I didn't even expect you to really do it. That's awesome. You got it pretty close. Okay, the way you remember it is, it's funny, Rice Crispy Monster. If you ever kind of forget, Rice Crispy Monster, that's like the closest thing. Reichsküchenmeister. And that's a place where they have Flammkuchen. I know Sarah had it yesterday. So Flammkuchen, the closest thing to it is a pizza. However, tell me if I'm wrong, Sarah, it really doesn't taste like a pizza, but it's like the closest thing to anything else. So it's really just flat dough, very light, and the toppings are completely different. The classic one is usually bacon, onions, and sour cream or cheese. Yeah, and there's a lot of different ones, so we highly recommend going there. And that's right by the St. Jacob's Church, and maybe 2-minute walk from the hotel. And we can point that out. Of course, we have recommendations for German restaurants or even for good Italian places, but that's our #1 recommendation. So come see us if you want to get more information. And I think we're actually getting pretty close. All these wiener dogs today. Saw them? Let's see them. They're so cute.
They call wiener dogs, Jeremy.
Also, the picture here on the map, that's a really great photo opportunity. And it's actually, look to your left, right there, you can get a really beautiful picture. It's called Unplurned Line. So that's the picture. And we are almost there. And if you want to look to your right hand side, the green building, that's the bakery we're going to tomorrow. And you already see the snowballs. To your left is the Torture Museum, Kriminalmuseum. You see Dirndl in the shops as well. And then if you want to look on your right hand side, that brownish reddish building right here, Waffenkammer, that is where we're doing the dress up tomorrow. We'll show you again tomorrow, so don't worry about it. But that's the Waffenkammer where we're doing the dress up. And they will also give you 10%. They're really, really good people. We enjoy working with them. So again, you get 10%, just tell them you're with Disney. And this is the marketplace. So right over here, if you ever want to meet up, this is a good meeting place. And then we're almost here. And then I don't know if you can see it, that's the town hall and that's the tower right up here, 200 feet. And the Christmas store right over here, Deutsches Weihnachtsmuseum, Käthe Wohlfahrt. And so Andy's gonna jump out, but we're still staying on the bus because Ottmar has to turn around first, so please stay seated. But yes, this is Eisenhut. This is where we're actually staying. If you continue walking, and I'm sure we'll do it during the tour too, if you continue walking, you're going to the garden area, very nice. You can also take nice walks. Unter den Linden. So yeah, we can give you all the information. So Ottmar is actually going to leave us just for a day because tomorrow we won't need a bus. So if there's anything you really need for the next 2 days, please grab it. If you don't, you can leave it here. This exact same bus will be back in 2 days. But whatever you need, please take it. So if you want to look to your left, you see the tower. So it's really not that high, but you see how tight it is. So if there are several guests or people up there, it can get kind of tight. But again, the view is beautiful, so I highly recommend doing that. Okay, so we will see you inside. Andy should be getting the room keys ready. Make sure you also get a map. And then also the vouchers over here. And we'll see you inside. Make sure you grab everything, please.
Rothenberg. Want your jacket? Your jacket, your bag, your...
I can't carry everything.
There you go. Happy,
yes.
Merry Christmas.
40.
The chicken bag.
Clean. Here, it's all up.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, I have this.
So if you here, you can see part of the St. Jacob's Church right over there.
Tower can find them out.
Yeah, that's the tower she's talking about.
Yeah, that's the tower. Yep.
We'll go up there. Hey, Keisha, you see that bus? It looks like it got spray on the top of it? You see the bus that has spray on the top?
So,
One for family first, and then I'll come back.
You can go get it. We can get one.
Do you think you're going to separate?
no.
We might have to get more. We can get you
No,
more.
yeah, it
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This isn't a map, it's a
I'm not buying
Oh no, the
squash.
map you will get.
So
This
maybe
is
for
the
now.
voucher for
We gotta go check it out.
the shopping. The map will be inside.
Oh, all right.
Get the map too. Get one to keep people and one use. You know.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2 left over. How about one more here, and then you also want it. Your family wanted one more. So
I don't need squash.
good. Thank you.
3%, and that's what it says? Is that what it is? I thought you said 10%. Just in case it's too small, I mean, like,
Anybody else who would like to grab a water?
Did you hear me too?
Water for anybody?
Yes, please.
Think we should get another water? No.
I guess we can take it out.
Yeah, go. This thing's really heavy.
Want water and distribute your Fantas?
Well, you never know. My town doesn't need to be fans of all.
3%. That is 3%. Those are the Christmas store. The Waffenkammer, where we're doing the dress up, is 10%. For that, you just say you were with Disney.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Hello. Okay, let's go inside. Follow me. Make sure you have everything. Okay, is everybody inside? Everybody. So down here is the lobby. There is one elevator. So if you need to use the elevator, it is right here to the right. So you don't go straight by that door, that entrance to the right. That's where the elevator is. However, just to let you know, Tinkerbell kind of needs the elevator right now too. So might be a little bit busy at that time, but just let you know there's an elevator. If you go straight through the door and then turn right and then just continue going straight, that's where the breakfast room is for tomorrow. So through the door and then right. Yes, straight and then right. Yes, and then I think we're ready for the keys. We'll call out the names of, and then these. Don't lose these. These are the codes for the internet, and you might have to log on again once, if you log out for a certain time, you might have to log on again. So don't lose this until you actually leave in 2 days. Here you go. So you are on the 3rd floor.
Should you need more access codes, you can go to the reception and give you some. Also, you have 1 map each per package, but I have some more maps if you want more maps. Next one.
49 and 350 for you.
How do you get
I'm not sure I want to do it.
Okay. Here you go.
Nico Eisenhund, Rothenberg.
221?
226.
We're gonna have one piece and then bring the map along. Okay, let's go. Ready? Yeah.
These are the stairs. We'll be down here if you have a few questions. If not, we're meeting at 8:30. 8:30. See you there. Yes, see you at 8:30. We're going to
You defend yourself with this thing. 226, up 1.
So up.
Which key is it?
We're gonna bring it in. We'll get this going. Well, if you're hungry, I can get your sandwich, huh?
We'll see.
Because you're not the same as us, so I don't care.
I did Kia. Psych, they have no air.
No air.
I'm joking.
Okay, I'm get ready for the walk.
Let's just go. We'll figure it out later.
Right now, I don't need my
Yeah, that's weird.
We'll give you one now. Yeah, we can.
Very pink bathroom.
Wait, take out the stuff. I'm just
My bed. Their bed. They're about the same size almost.
Yeah, because it's too heavy to carry everything, you know. Put it all together.
Very simple. More room than the Marriott. Probably in case we wanted the other room, but we don't, so it's probably going to be closed. The view from our room in Rothenberg.
Did you open this or no?
Yeah, it's full of fruit.
Let me see, I want to see it. Yeah, we don't drink. We better lock it for this reason. Yeah, because you're responsible to pay for it, Carl.
And take one of the whole thing. Wait. Oh, boy.
Out the way.
Guys, are we ready to start?
Okay, so I think we can start our tour now. So first of all, good evening. And well, guten Abend. Oh, you want me to conduct the tour in German? Would be much easier for me. So, well, my name is Daniel and I'm the night watchman here in town. I now want to take you around. I want to show you some of our most important and most beautiful buildings. And I think we probably have to talk a bit about our history as well, so you know a lot of things about Rothenberg after this tour. And I think at the beginning of our tour we probably have to talk about a night watchman. You should know whom you're with tonight. And first of all, I have to tell you, night watchman in the old days, it was considered to be a very low and a very bad profession. And nobody would have joined a night watchman by his free will. So as you can see, our situation today improved a lot. You're even paying money to see me. That was crazy for people in the old days. And also the working hours of the night watchman, they improved a lot too. In the old days, the night watchman, he had to be on the street for the whole night, which means from sunset in the evening until sunrise in the morning. And you can imagine that was very long and cold, especially in the winters. Tonight we will do an hour and that's it already. Not that much longer. Well, night watchman, it was a bad profession because he was on the street at night time, and that was the time when all honest people in those days were at home. People were scared of the darkness and nobody left the house at night time without a very good reason, and somebody like the night watchman, whose duty was to be on the street for the whole night. That was considered to be really bad, but he was a very important person as well, because he was responsible for the safety and security at night time. And his most important duty was to watch out for fires. That was by far the biggest fear for us in the Middle Ages. It was wooden houses, and in the beginning they were all covered with straw, so everything burned immediately. And that's a matter of fact, only very few people in those days could afford a stone house. The normal way of building homes was a wooden construction, a timber frame construction, as you can see it in the building on the other side of the street. Well, Stones were extremely expensive, well, because there was no machine to cut them out of the quarries. They all had to be taken out by hand, very hard work. That's quite interesting. We still have a word in our German language. We use that for very rich people, and very rich people in German, we call them stone rich. Because in those days, only really rich guys could afford a stone house. That was absolutely not normal. But a night watchman was not just looking out for fires. He was responsible for everything else happening on the street at nighttime as well. He was a kind of a policeman at night. And as every policeman, he had a weapon. His weapon, it was called a halberd. And as you can see, a halberd, it's not just one weapon. It's a combination of 3 different weapons. A spear, an axe, and a hook at the side. And I don't think we have to talk about a spear and the axe. You all can imagine how they were used. Or do you want to see a demonstration? But a really interesting thing, it was this hook. This hook on the side, it made a halberd the perfect weapon against the knight on his horse. You could hook the knight at his weakest position. It was between his breast and his back protection, on the side, where both parts of his armory were just connected with leather stripes. And you could pull him down from the horse. But of course also used in the knees of a pedestrian, a very interesting weapon. Once the knight was laying on the ground, you could always try to use the hook and the long arm as a kind of a can opener. If the knight and the rest with the spear. So that was a well-designed weapon. And if the night watchman recognized he couldn't handle a situation on his own, therefore he had his horn, so he could blow it to call his colleagues for assistance. In the old days there were always 6 night watchmen on duty every night. Tonight we are very likely just 2. But please behave. Well, if not, I have the cell phone numbers of the other 4. I can call them in case I need them, yes? Okay, and a few words about our city history. I know it's really hard to believe today, but there once was a time when Rothenberg was one of the biggest and most important cities in southern Germany. Today we have a population of less than 11,000.
Oh, wow.
So, not a big significance anymore, except for tourism, of course. But around 1400 we were among the major cities in our country. We were by far biggest city in those days, at least in terms of population, it was Cologne. By the way, nobody was talking about Berlin in those days, sadly, yes? Cologne had an outstanding number of citizens. We're talking about 30,000. Yes. 6,000 here in Rothenberg. They were enough to be in the 2nd league of cities in those days. And even more important than just the population, Rothenberg was one of the biggest city territories. We had 400 square kilometers of land. That's about 250 square miles. 180 small villages were on our territory. And all this land was our wealth, because it was good fertile land. So we were growing wheat, we were growing wine, and we had a lot of sheep on our land, so we were trading the wool. Trading the wool was our main income. The wool from Rothenberg, it was traded in northern Italy, in Florence in those days already. And Rothenberg had the highest privilege a city could get. Rothenberg was what we call an imperial city. And that means we were an independent country, directly under the German emperor. No duke, no count, no earl and no bishop. Nobody else had any rights and any influence in our town. And that was a wonderful privilege, especially in terms of taxation. We only pay taxes to the emperor. And considering the splendid lifestyle of the dukes in those days, we can imagine that this saved us lots of money. And just to give you an idea what a country of 400 square kilometers still could mean in Europe today, if we would still be in existence in our old borders, Rothenberg wouldn't be the smallest European country. Comparing our former size with today's Liechtenstein. That's a small country between Austria and Switzerland. And then we can see Rothenberg in those days, it was about 2.5 times bigger than Liechtenstein is today. So as you can see, we probably still could be an independent European country. We always have to keep that in mind when we're talking about that. In those days, Germany consisted of about 400 territories. It was this Holy Roman Empire of German nation. What a confusing name for it. It was not holy, it was not Roman, and it was not even an empire. The Holy Roman Empire was just a loose association of about 400 smaller subunits underneath the German emperor. So not a united nation with a strong central government. No, we just had that in Germany since the year 1874, since the days of Bismarck, And before that it was always loose associations, and one of those 400 territories in the Middle Ages, it was the imperial city of Rothenburg. And you can imagine now, having such a big number of small territories caused many, many problems, especially for the traders. They had to cross the border almost every day, and every time a trader crossed the border,
more money.
He had to pay toll and taxes. And that was by far not his only problem. In all those territories, they had different weights and measurements. There was no standardized system as we now use it all over Europe, the metric system of meters, kilometers, grams and kilograms and all that. No, the metric system, that's a fairly new thing. It's a result of the French Revolution. And in Germany, we just have that since 1871. Not for a long time. And before that, each of the countries had own weights and measurements, and so did we. And here in Rothenberg, we still can see our old measurements. Our old measurements, that's those irons at the entrance of the town hall. So let's move over there and have a look at them.
Cool.
Different.
So, well, the one here in the middle, it's still well known. It's in use in some countries. For example, in the US, it is
Foot.
a foot. Well, we called it a shoe, but I think that's pretty close, isn't it? Huh? The one here, a body measure as well. In German, we call it an L. You probably would call it an arm. It's everything between your elbow and your fingertips. And as you can see, that was a massive man. People in those days, of course, they were by far not as tall as we are today. But we were often cheating with them. Maybe to pretend our mayor is bigger than yours. There's another one on the other side, a body measure as well. Everything between your two arms when you're standing like that, used for buying firewood. In German we call it a Klafter, you probably would call it a span. And the long one here, that's pretty forgotten in the meanwhile, at least here in Germany, that was used for the size of fields in farming. It was called a rod. In the old days, the rod was 13 shoes, in our two-day system about 4 meters. So you can imagine, this must have been a really confusing time when the distance between Rothenberg and Nuremberg was different than the distance between Nuremberg and Rothenberg, depending if you were using Rothenberg measurements or Nuremberg measurements. And I think it's not hard to imagine that this caused some misunderstandings. And life was not really easy for traders in those days. Okay, please follow me inside where we have a city map. Let's have a quick look at a city map together to give you an overview about our city history. Okay, I know the light in here is not perfect, but I think you can see the rough lines, and that will do for us for the moment. So before we have a closer look at a map, I want to take you back to the very beginning of our city history. How does the history of a city start? In Rothenberg, it's quite easy to tell, at least for those who understand German. Do you happen to understand a few words in German?
Andy here, yeah.
Except ein Bier bitte?
Ein Bier bitte, yeah.
Well, that's the most important phrase in German. Except zwei Bier bitte, maybe. So, you know what bird means, Andy, yes? Bird means... B-U-R-G, yes.
Castle.
Well, let's better translate it with fortress. Because it always has a defending character. So it's not it was not a splendid palace, it was a fortress. So in the beginning of our history, it was a fortress. And a fortress was a great reason to start with a settlement because it provided two things very important for people in those days. First and absolute most important thing, of course, was protection. It was well defended. If it was dangerous outside, you could always escape into the fortress. And we have to keep in mind the Middle Ages, rough days with a lot of wars. And the second thing a fortress could provide was you could find work there as well, a job. Of course, whoever was living in this fortress, they were always in need of servants, soldiers, and other employees. So as you can see, it was basically the same needs as we have them today. We all want to live in a safe place, and we all have to make our money, so things didn't really change in the last 850 years. And the fortress where history started was right here. There was a perfect location for this fortress. It was a perfect location because of the river. And the important thing, it was not a border in the river. You can't use it for transportation. It's too small for ships, and we're not too sure on board here. No, the important thing, it was the high elevation difference between the river and this fortress. A 250 feet ditch. It's pretty steep. We'll look down into it well later on. So the fortress was perfectly protected by nature on 3 sides. Almost impossible to be attacked. That was our main concern. And then people settled next to this fortress. So we have a first city, and this was protected by the wall already. And you still can recognize the location of the first walled ring if you just look at the streets going in a circle. That was our first walled ring. And therefore we have some strange defending towers standing in the middle of the city. I think you saw them already walking around, and those were the first city gates. And looking at the name of this street, Altort Stadtgraben, that translates into old moat. So there used to be a moat outside the first walled ring. But then later on we had to fill this moat again to have space for the city enlargements. That was our big problem, but as soon as the first walled ring was finished, we recognized immediately it was bad planning. The city was too small, but we tried to keep the walls short. We know it already. Stones were really expensive, but Rothenberg too small. So we made a big city enlargement, enough space for everybody. And then about 100 years later, a second city enlargement here in the south. And that seems crazy, doesn't it? That's a long wall, 900 meters, 1,000 yards of extra city walls, expensive walls for a very small part. But down here was something very important. Those were the buildings. That was our hospital. And first, the hospital was, as in most other cities in those days, outside the walls. They didn't know anything about infections or diseases. So nobody wanted to be in contact with those people. We had them outside. But later on we recognized the hospital within the walls can be helpful as well. In a siege, for example. If we could hear our injured defenders, maybe they could come back to fighting. And then we made a long wall all around it. Therefore the city of Rothenberg has this very unusual and unique shape. But at least we can explain it. Well, I don't want to bore you with too many dates today, but in case you'd like to remember one, please remember the year 1142, because that's when the fortress was first mentioned in the documents, so we take that as our birthday here in town. By the way, it was built by a German emperor called, his name was Conrad III. At about 1400, we started with the hospital enlargement. That was exactly the time when Rothenberg was on the peak of the city development. That was the time when we owned those 400 square kilometers of land. We talked about them already. And Rothenberg was playing in the top league of German cities. But the glorious days didn't last very long. Well, in the year 1631, our city was taken by General Tilly during the 30-year War. I'll tell you that story later on. And even though we managed to give him enough money so he didn't destroy our city, and we kept our independency, but after that we were broke and without any significance. Then even worse, in the early 1800s, we lost our independency. Rothenberg became a part of the new kingdom of Bavaria. So no longer an imperial city anymore. No, that Rothenberg was just a small town at the very edge of this big kingdom. That was a bad time. But then it was about 1860, something very important happened. Because in those days, the first artists were coming to Rothenberg, and they rediscovered our completely forgotten but also so well-kept city. They made the pictures here. People bought them and they finally wanted to see when they were painted. And then they traveled to Rothenberg. So you could call those pictures the first tourism brochures for our city. And then tourism started, and since then we had a reliable income on tourism. And that's the reason why our city is so well kept. First, there was no money for any changes. That's why the city still looks like in the days of the 30-year War. And then we had our first income by tourism. And we understood immediately the city has to look the same. Otherwise the visitors would not come anymore. And then Rothenberg was one of the first German cities with city codes to protect the historic buildings here in town. Okay, and now let's move to the market square, please. So, the very city center, and let's have a quick look at the buildings here. Some of them are quite interesting. For example, on the left side of the square, our big town hall, and as you can see, at least in medieval terms, this is unbelievable big. You have to imagine this town hall, it was built in the same size at about 1300 already. It looked different because the front wing burned down and was rebuilt in the Renaissance style later on. But anyway, the original size was the same, and considering the population of those days, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 citizens. For such a small number of people, it's a huge town hall. But as a public building, it was a great way to show off the wealth of our city, yes. And in those days, we talked about it already, we were on our way to become one of the most important cities in southern Germany. But I won't talk about all the details of the town hall tonight. There's a town hall everywhere. Let's have a look at another building. The building straight on with the big clock. Today it's our tourist information. Oh. But as you can imagine, this was not always used, and it was never built as a tourist information. No, this once was built as our city councillor's drinking tavern. That means it was a private pub for the members of our city government. Our councillors could go in there after their parliament sessions to have their drinks. We didn't want them to go into public places, because they probably talked about important things after they had a few glasses too much. And then we decided to give them a separate room. And there is a very similar thing in many other German cities. In a lot of other German cities, there is a restaurant in the cellar of the town hall. It's called Ratskeller. Rat has nothing to do with rats. It means city council. Keller means cellar. In other cities, they were using the cellar of the town hall for the purpose. But Rothenberg, it was such a rich and wealthy city, so an ordinary cellar was not good enough for us. We built a whole house for this purpose. And we know of 2 cases in our files where members of our city government killed each other in pub fightings in there when they were drunk. So if anybody thinks politics is bad today, no. It was worse in the old days, and we know for sure that they were drinking a lot in there, because we still have the wine order for the first session of the new elected city council in our records. So we know what the 40 councillors ordered. First they ordered 2.5 buckets of wine, but then they were not sure if it was enough. So they ordered another bucket of good wine and another bucket of bad wine.
Oh, funny.
Quite interesting that they were ordering bad wine as well.
Yeah.
But at the end, they probably didn't need expensive stuff anymore.
Exactly.
So at least they were concerned about the money, yes?
Yes.
And then our 40 councillors, they had 4.5 buckets of wine. And now the important question,
How big is a bucket?
how big is a bucket?
You beat
And
me
don't
to
expect
it.
the bucket to be a little thing as we have it today to carry things. No, a bucket in those days, it was a measurement for liquids. And the bucket in Rothenberg, it was holding a bit more than 71 liters. In case you're not too familiar with the metric system, that's close to 18 US gallons in one bucket. And they had 4.5 of them. And we are pretty sure nobody will leave the party thirsty, yes. Even though wine was not as strong as it is today, and people were used to drinking wine. In all medieval cities, wine was the normal drink. Nobody was drinking water here. Drinking water was considered to be extremely dangerous and could kill you. Well, you can imagine the hygienic situation here in town. They had no sewers. And now you can imagine the quality of the water in the wells, and nobody would drink that. And therefore wine was just a perfect solution, because it's made out of grapes. So it's clean and pure, and by the way, not just in the Middle Ages. Ooh!
Come and get you.
Hey, good night. Oh, this is my colleague Stephen, yes? Hi, Stephen. Huh?
Nice.
Double night watchman with cheese.
You have cheese with you? I've some bacon.
Some bacon.
Bye, Mark. And by the way, not just in the Middle Ages, even later on in our history, people were drinking a lot. Well, we know that the most famous German poet, his name was Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. He was drinking 3 bottles of wine every day as well. And that allowed Goethe to write wonderful poems. And Goethe didn't just like wine, no, Goethe also loved women. And then somebody asked Goethe whether it was easier not to have wine or women. And what was his answer?
Wine.
No.
Did you say easier or better? Sorry, joking.
Was it? Goethe had the smartest answer. He said, "It's a matter of the vintage." A wise man. Okay, and let me tell you now the best known story of our city, the story of the master draft. That's the story how Rothenberg was saved by a drinker. A story that took place in the 30-year War, the 30-year War between 1618 and 1648. A big European war, a religious war between Catholics and Protestants. And the worst disaster we ever had in our German history. In this war, our country lost about 1/3 of the total population. And of course, most people didn't lose their lives in military action on the battlefield. No, either they starved because the soldiers were plundering everything, or they burned the fields down so the enemy couldn't get the food, or people, they died of infections and diseases that were brought into the cities. First of all, the bubonic plagues, but many other diseases as well. And it was about the middle of this horrible war, fall in the year 1631. There was a Catholic general. His name was Tilly, with a big army here in the area. And first General Tilly, he didn't even have any plans with us. Even though our city was on the Protestant, on the enemy side, he didn't want to attack us. But this year there was an early winter. And then after snowfall and rain, the streets were in very poor condition, muddy roads. He couldn't proceed anymore. The soldiers were freezing. They were hungry. So he needed an accommodation for the winter time. But there was only one bigger city close by to accommodate them all. Bad luck for us, it was our city. Tilly sent us a messenger, and his message was really simple. It was just, surrender, open your gates. But we knew exactly what Tilly did with the Protestant city of Magdeburg just half a year before that. Magdeburg was completely destroyed. 20,000 people were killed. No way that we would have surrendered to a cruel man like Tilly. No, we decided to trust in our walls, and that we bravely defended our city. For 2 days and nights. But on the 3rd day it happened. On the 3rd day, one of our defenders, he walked into the powder storage at the walls. and he had a torchlight in his hands. As you can imagine, gunpowder and fire don't mix. There was an explosion, our walls were damaged, and then we finally had to surrender. Well, so far it's historic facts. And now we start with the story of the master draft. We try to make the best out of this miserable situation, and we welcome the general. We welcomed him with the biggest glass of wine we had in our city, holding 13 local wine measurements. In our 2-day system, that's 3.25 liters. Almost the US gallon. And even for us Germans, a decent sized glass. Tilly was deeply impressed when he saw that, and after the first negotiations, he took the welcome sip. But we know, very strange for those days, but General Tilly, he was usually not drinking wine. He was not drinking any kind of alcohol. So after he had the first sip, he was a bit drunk already. And Tilly offered our city a bet. If anybody of you can finish this glass in one gulp, we will not destroy your city. That's a responsible duty, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you have to save a city, so you need an important person to take care of, and maybe somebody who's experienced. In our city, we call that the mayor, of course. The former mayor, a man called George Nush, said, I'll give it a try, there is nothing to lose. And while looking around, you can see
Everything's good.
the city is not destroyed.
That's true.
So he saved us. Then he walked back home, slept 3 nights and days. Now we'll go back to historic facts. Nush, in those days, he reached the age of 80. Average life expectancy was just about 40 years, so he was unbelievably old. Which obviously means if you drink enough of our local wine,
you'll live forever.
It's very good for your health. But please don't try to repeat a master draft. I shouldn't recommend that. Some guests tried it already, and one visitor from Canada almost finished the glass. But it all ended up in the hospital. Alcohol poisoning. Now you can see the 2 main characters of the story. On the left window, the attacking General Tilly, and on the right window, the Mayor George Nush. And you'll see after a few seconds, he'll lift this glass, he'll drink out of it, he'll finally empty it. This is happening really slowly, but of course it's a big heavy glass. He's doing it 13 times a day, quite a challenge. It is completely useless to apply for this job. I tried it already. And I don't even have a new list.
Yeah, I guess really neat.
So the master draft, that's a jolly good story, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there is one problem.
It's not true. It's not true.
It's not true at all, right? The master draft never ever happened. This story was just written 135 years ago for a historic festival. We still show that sometimes in the town hall. And quite interesting, the story was written by a glassmaker. Truth was much easier. After he surrendered, so far it was historic facts. But after he surrendered, we gave Tilly a lot of money not to be destroyed, and we never recovered from that. After the 30-year war, Rothenberg was broke, poor and bankrupt. And well, you still can see that today as well. If you just look around. What can you see when you look around?
People.
Old buildings. After the 30-year war, there was no money in our city for any changes. No money for new buildings. Our city was preserved by poverty. Bad for people in the old days, great for us today. Because that's the reason you are here. And you're not the only guests in town. In a year, we have about 2.2 million visitors coming to us. A lot for a small town with just 11,000 citizens. About 1/4 of our income here in Rothenberg is directly by our guests. So that means, without you, we couldn't survive. So we are very thankful that you're here to visit us. Okay, let's move this way.
It's neat. I know, that is neat.
It's cool.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that.
I saw stuff, I saw windows and they weren't quite closed and there were people there, so I was like, that's odd, but I don't know.
Wow, you didn't notice that? I didn't even notice that.
I tried to percent it. I don't remember anything.
Here.
Look, zoom tight. Yeah. I think I should say that.
Öffentliche Führung halb 10 am Marktplatz. Das ist der englischsprachige. Okay. Danke.
I don't know. I heard floor is your
Two.
second floor?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so you went up like 2 flights of stairs.
Yes.
So we have to go up the first flight and take right. And you go up another flight of stairs. And you go down and take a left and take another flight of stairs. And then you don't take the first flight of stairs that you see. You go past that, you go right. My mom's gonna make a video of that.
Your godmother was making you in that room? We'll go out that way.
I'll make a video. My mom's gonna make a video and we'll.
The way they have to get to their room.
It's ridiculous.
Okay, if you probably want to move a little over, you're standing in the middle of the street. And some German drivers are definitely crazy.
Well, they're not going to remember the tables.
Maybe.
Okay, well, please have a look at this beautiful iron sign right here above me. As you can see in the ring at the bottom of this sign, there is a golden star. Any ideas about the significance of this star?
Jewish?
It's not a Star of David. No, it's not a Jewish star. That would have been too easy and I never ever would have asked.
Yeah.
That's the guild sign for a very important profession.
Witches.
The most important profession.
Night watchman.
Even more important than night watchers.
Oh, beer makers.
Absolutely right. That's the guild sign of the brewers. Whenever you see such a star in a medieval city, you can be sure it was a brewery. That was one of about 20 breweries Rothenberg used to have in the year 1700. Well, we talked about it already. In the Middle Ages, wine was the normal drink. But that changed, because at the end of the Middle Ages, the climate was changing. It was getting colder in Europe, and then growing wine became impossible in more and more areas. But people still needed something to drink. And then big parts of Germany, they switched from wine drinking to beer drinking areas. But first you might think beer is not a good replacement for the wine. At least not in hygienic terms. Because the main ingredients of beer is
Hops.
Barley.
water.
Water. Oh.
90% of the beer is water, and the quality of the water didn't improve. But compared to water, beer has a big benefit.
You don't feel it?
Beer is always boiled, and therefore free of bacteria. Well, of course, they didn't know about bacteria, but experience told them, if we drink beer, we will survive. And so they were even feeding babies with diluted beer in those days. That was absolutely normal, and they were sleeping pretty well too. Yes, and just because they started drinking more beer, we even had to establish a law to guarantee the quality of the beer. It was the purity law on German beer, the Reinheitsgebot. Well, do you happen to know the date?
15. I don't.
You can't find information on almost every beer bottle in Germany.
15, 16.
Very good. Do you happen to know the exact date as well?
No.
It was April 23rd, 1516. Probably the most important date in our German history. And that makes the purity law the oldest food protection law in the whole world, allowing just 4 ingredients as in German beer. It's just water, malt, hops, and yeast. And that's all you need for a good beer. And looking at this star once again, it's actually 2 triangles within each other. The one with the tip to the bottom, that's the alchemist symbol for water. And the one with the tip to the top, that's the alchemist symbol for fire. Water, the main ingredients, and beer always spoiled. And therefore we have fire and water in the guild sign of the beer brewers. And during the Middle Ages, this star was not used to label Jewish houses or Jewish properties. That was done later on, but not during the Middle Ages. Okay, getting thirsty now. This way.
See now?
No, I know. Yes.
you move a little over so you can see this direction.
Oh.
Yes. So this is one of those first city gates. You remember we talked about them on the city map. And the street behind this tower is quite interesting. The name of this street, it's Gallows Street. It's called Gallows Street because just outside the gate at the end of the street was the place where the executions took place. By the way, that's the gate where you came into the city by bus. That's the only one that's suitable for big buses. All the others are too small. And by the way, at basically the same spot where we had the executions in the old days, today it's the spot where the tax collector's office is. And we're not sure if this is planned or not. Yes, and all punishments in the Middle Ages were always done in public. But of course it was to make sure that people knew what happened to them if they committed the same crime. But all punishments in the Middle Ages were also considered to be good entertainment for other people to watch them. Even executions were done in public, and that was basically the only entertainment they had once in a while in their boring lives. But those executions, they were by far not as frequently as you might think. Here in Rothenberg we had about 1 per year in average. And we also had some bad years. With none. So not very reliable for your leisure plans. You had to do all those punishments in the Middle Ages. It was... No, the night watchman was not doing dirty business like that. No. It was the job of the executioner. So you can see it a very important profession. But even though the executioner was very well paid, much better than a night watchman, but he even had a worse reputation. There was just one person in town standing below the executioner. It was his business partner.
Mortuary?
The undertaker, yes. They had the same clients, just a little difference in time. So you can imagine it was always a big difficulty for our city to find a new executioner. Nobody wanted to do this job. But there was a smart solution to this problem as well. The smart solution was the new executioner was... No, then we had no undertaker anymore. No, the new executioner was the son of the old executioner, of course. Well, this poor boy couldn't find any other job anyway. It was a family business. But I think you can all see the next problem already. Before he can have a boy, he needs to find a wife. And which girl would have married the executioner? The worst. Well, you might say maybe the daughter of the undertaker. But you can imagine that the undertaker had exactly the same problems finding a girl. So it was not very likely that he had a daughter. But therefore the executioner, as long as he was not married, he had a special privilege. Every time a girl was sentenced to death, he was allowed to ask her.
So literally a fate worse than...
Will you marry me? Or should we hang you? And considering those two options, I think we can imagine that the answer was very clear. The girl said, no. Yes. Go on, hang me. And we're very serious. Well, there was just one thing people in those days were more afraid of than dying, and this was what happened to their souls after they died. Religious days, and of course the executioner was on the dark side, on that side, so it was clear for them, if they had contact with him, their soul could go to paradise. Hell was expecting them. And I think therefore we can understand the girls and that most of them rather died than to marry the executioner. Just once in a while one of them was stupid enough and she married the executioner. And if our city was really lucky, then they had a boy. And we had less problems here in town. Let's go this one, please. Good old days, isn't it?
Birkenstocks. Whitish.
I'm afraid I'm lounging.
Beginning of the sunset shining through.
Sorry.
Very specific area.
Getting this in down, we started dancing.
Maybe we can cure him. Okay, this is our main church. That's St. James. So the German name is St. Jakob, in Spanish, Santiago. He's the patron saint of the pilgrims. And St. James was the only church here in Rothenberg that was built and financed by our citizens. The other churches, they are monastery or convent churches, so the orders paid for them. And as you can see, our citizens, they made sure that their church was by far the biggest and also the most beautiful one, but of course in an imperial city we had a very proud citizenship. And I think you can imagine that building such a big church was a big challenge for us in the Middle Ages. Do you have any ideas how long it took us to build this church?
50 years.
50 years is by far not long enough.
I was going to say 150.
100 is still not long enough.
I said 150.
Oh, 150, that's pretty close. Yeah, in the beginning it was 140 years. 140 years is a long time, but it's still a very acceptable time. Well, if you're ever going to the city of Cologne, you might ask them how long they are working on their main church. They started about 600 years ago, and they're not finished yet. And looking at our new Berlin airport, it seems like we're having similar problems in Germany. Well, the big problem was you could just work on the church if you had money. And there was just some money to work on the church if there was no war in peace days. A big problem. There were too many conflicts in the Middle Ages. Here in Rothenberg we had massive troubles with two of our neighbors. It was the Prince Bishop from Würzburg and it was the Duke from Nuremberg. So if you're ever going to one of those cities, please keep that in mind. They've been lousy neighbors for us. They always visited us but they never brought gifts. They took them here in town. But after 140 years our church was finished. And it was fine until we recognized it was bad planning. And our church was too small. We still needed more space in our church. More space for a new altar for the important relic we have. We have a few drops of holy blood. And of course we wanted to be attractive for pilgrims that were all spending their money here in town. Of course, they were welcome. But if you want to enlarge the church, you need money. More money, and you need space, land. But medieval cities are very densely populated, and with the land we had a problem. And we'll have a look at this problem, but therefore we have to move to the next corner, please. Yeah, I always asked the choir to sing a song for you. I hope you like it, yes.
It's Palestrina.
And the choir.
Okay, and here you can see the problem we had with the enlargement of our church. As you can see, there is a road. But this is not a small secondary road, that would have been no problem, we could close it. But that's the main street to the northern city gate. And we couldn't close this important street to extend the church. But as you can see, we found a smart solution to the problem. We just built a church over the street. So you might say Rothenberg is one of the very few cities in the world with a drive-through church. But as you can imagine, there is no drive-through service. Therefore, you still have to go inside by taking the car and driving to the church. That's very normal for us. We do it every day. And in this section over the street, it's a bit hidden because it's upstairs. But up there is a really beautiful piece of art, a beautiful wood-carved altar done by Tillmann Riemenschneider. He was the best-known German woodcarver in the late Middle Ages. And I highly recommend to visit that tomorrow. And if you're going into the church, please make sure to go to the other end of the church as well. Have a look at the main altar, in the main altar, the bottom painting. There you will see Jesus and his 12 disciples. And looking into the face of St. Peter, you'll see St. Peter, he is wearing eyeglasses.
Was he really?
But this altar it was painted in the year 1466. So that means that it must have had glasses in those days. And it's true, it was a brand new thing, the glasses that were coming from Italy into our area. And the artist, he was so fascinated by this new thing that he painted them immediately into this altar. And probably the most beautiful thing in the church is the big stained glass windows behind the main altar. Extremely precious because they are really, really old. The middle window was made in 1350 already. The two to the left and to the right are from 1400, and you don't see such old windows very often. And those are still the original windows, even though this eastern part of the church was damaged in an air raid in World War II. At the very end of the war, we had an air raid on our city. 40% of Rothenberg were destroyed, and the eastern part of the church was damaged as well. But those windows, they've been brought into a safe aircraft shelter before this air raid, and so they survived it. And next to the right window, you'll see a picture, a detail of the window up there. And at the bottom of this picture, you can see the Israelites on their way out of Egypt. And you probably know the story. They were just about to starve when they were escaping through the desert. And then they were fed with heaven's bread, with manna. And at the top end of the picture, you can see the angels throwing manna for them. And looking at the pieces of bread they are throwing, you will see some pretzels. Well, for people in those days, the pretzel was the most delicious thing they could imagine. So for them, heaven's bread manna, it was a pretzel. And I think that's very, very understandable. Yes. So as you can see, there are lots of beautiful things to be discovered in the church. Do that tomorrow, I highly recommend that. Okay, and now for the moment I would say, enough of the church, we'll walk down this road, please.
You just imagine the Israelites like, we just made it out of Egypt. Like, please help us. And the angel's like, pretzels.
Well, I completely agree that a pretzel is a heavenly thing.
Yeah, I was just saying that they would have been confused. Like, what? What? What is it twisted? Yeah, what happened to the bread? And the angels are like, trust me. That's good.
Just bite. Don't question.
Yeah, bread is crying. They're fully. It's like one of the buildings in our town. There's a two-story building. It has double doors on the second floor that lead outwards, like into the open air. And that was one of the days when you had to put the liquor in really big boxes. And if you were to unpack the boxes and go through the narrow stairway upstairs, like one at a time, you'd have to do it like that. It would take hours. And instead they put a pallet underneath like, all of the wine bottles and hoisted them up to big double doors on the second floor and pulled them through. Pretty nuts. I think that it would save time to install a pulley and big double doors that lead outwards to, no ground. But you're at an advantage. Short legs go down hills easier. It's true.
Well, we have a medieval dress now. You can be a knight, or you can be a medieval lady, or you can be a monk.
Check-in is a month in July.
Okay. Check it out.
Okay, careful, cars coming.
Sorry.
Some tourists who don't know what they're doing. Okay, he thought about it.
It's not the right way to go.
Oh well, there's a way through. It's narrow, but the car would fit through. If you're a good driver, it would fit. Even my minibus fits.
Oh.
There's less than an inch on each side, but it fits. Okay, so as you can see, we're at the city walls here, but you can see the wall here on this side. It's not very high and massive, and we don't have a rampart, a defending gallery on this side either. That wasn't required because that's the river side. Behind the wall is the ditch. So this side was perfectly protected by nature. And therefore we could even risk it to have this part of our walls in the old days defended by our tailors. Well, each guild, each profession was responsible for one part of the walls. And of course all those strong guys, the blacksmiths, the carpenters and the stonemasons, they had to defend the dangerous sides. But here we could risk it to give it in the hands of the guys who worked with needles. Because nothing was happening anyway, this was safe enough already. Let's proceed a little bit.
Yeah, makes you think twice about your profession.
I know.
If you will grow to be a blacksmith. Yeah, I'm gonna be jailer. I don't feel like fighting. Stone houses were also reserved for people who had all of their wealth in physical things, such as goldsmiths. Because a goldsmith couldn't just have a wooden house because he burned down the goldsmith's house to get off his gold leaf.
Oh, yeah.
So he needed a stone house. He was super paranoid all the time because all of his wealth was sitting in there in his house.
Remember, that was that part that was lightest protected with the walls. You can even see how the city was growing if you look at a few good landmarks. The first walled ring, it was next to St. John's Church. That's the church with the small tower and the black onion dome on top. Then we had the first city enlargement up to this square tower with the white facade. Yes? And everything behind this tower, south of this tower, that's the hospital district. So you can see that was a really massive city enlargement. And over there, behind the trees, was the spot where history once started with the fortress. But as you can see today, there is just a garden, but no fortress anymore. But a fortress doesn't just disappear, and David Copperfield was never here. So what happened to the fortress? Well, in most books about Rothenberg, you can read that this fortress was destroyed in an earthquake in the year 1356. And it's definitely true, there was a bad earthquake in the year 1356. But there is a problem, because this earthquake, it was in Switzerland. That's far away, yes? It was a strange earthquake, because they told us it destroyed a fortress, but it didn't damage the town hall. They told us it destroyed a fortress, but it didn't damage the houses in our city. And it didn't even damage most cities between here and Switzerland. Well, I don't know about you, but I have big difficulties believing that story. Experience tells us that earthquakes usually cause other demolition, so I think we can all agree that even though it's printed in most books, there was no earthquake that destroyed it, so it was something else. After this fortress was not used anymore, it was a really bad and desperate situation for our city. There was an empty fortress outside the walls. Enemies could hide in there to attack our city. And then, of course, it was all those good, expensive, precious stones right here in front of our doors, and they were cut already. So today we would call that recycling. We were reusing those stones for the houses and for the city walls. But a big problem was this fortress, it was still owned by our German emperor. And we couldn't tell our emperor, we stole your fortress to make beautiful houses. But well, therefore we have the story of the earthquake. And we have that story for a long, long time, since 16th century. But just because a story is 450 years old, it doesn't necessarily make it true. But it's up to you to believe it or not. I made my mind, I don't care about the rest. Let's go to this beautiful gate. Well, looking up, you can see there is a mask, a face. If you can't see it, you're not close enough. That was a pitch mask. We used that to pour boiling pitch or boiling oil on attacking enemies. So that was a very warm welcome for everybody who was not welcome to our city. And to the left and the right of this mask, you can see two small holes. They were for the chains of the drawbridge. As all other gates, this was protected with a moat and with the drawbridge. And you still can see where the drawbridge was, because it fit perfectly into the frame at the gate. So it was hard to use a hook to pull it down. Okay, and let's proceed a little bit. It was called one-man hole. One-man hole because it only allowed one man to come into the city at the same time. And that was very important for the security of a medieval city. Every evening at sunset, we locked all the gates. And we never ever opened a big gate during night time. That was too dangerous. Somebody else, an enemy probably could come into our city as well. And it didn't require a big army. Oh, some people trying to get through. Please leave a little alley for them. Huh? So, the little manhole, that was the last chance to get into the city. Every evening at sunset, all the gates were closed, and we never ever opened the big gate during that time, because maybe an enemy could come into our city as well, if we were not careful enough. And one enemy could be enough to destroy the city. Just imagine if he managed to light 2 or 3 fires. Everything was lost. So if you were coming home too late, after curfew, the gate was closed already, you just had 2 options. Option 1 was to stay outside. Not a good idea. Very dangerous. So if you wanted to come back into the safe city, there was just one true option left, and that was to knock at a manhole and then to ask the guard to open it for you. But first the guard had to check your ID carefully. But of course they had no picture IDs. But therefore the guard asked, what's your name? What's your address? What's the name of your mayor? What's the name of your councillors? All the other details only a citizen of Rothenberg, only a local could know. If the guard was very, very sure he's one of us, and no stranger was allowed to come in at night time anyway. If the guard was very sure, then he was finally allowed to open the manhole. But as you can see, it was a long procedure until this little manhole was open. And nobody was happy if it was used too frequently. How could you make sure it was not used every night?
Money.
To go through the manhole was really expensive. This costed about an average monthly income. That educated people a lot the next time to try to make it in time. Well, the manhole, it's not a new invention of the Middle Ages. No, it's much older, and it's even mentioned in the Bible already. Is anybody of you reading the Bible?
Yes.
Matthew 19:24? Come on, you don't want to disappoint me.
Off the top of my head.
It's called the Eye of the Needle. Very good. And now we understand the story of the camel, the rich man, and the eye of a needle. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And that's what Matthew had in mind when he was talking about the eye of a needle. That a very similar thing, a small door that could be easily controlled in the walls of Jerusalem when Jesus was living there. And the Crusaders saw it, copied it, and brought it back into Europe. Okay, and now let's go back into the city, please. On the other side of the street, and looking at the very, very top, you can see there is a wooden beam pointing into the street. And you'll see them on many, many houses here. And of course this was used as a crane. It was a pulley system, so people used it to pull up things to store them in the attic of their house. And first of all, they were storing a lot of food in their houses. There was even a law here in Rothenberg, everybody had to store enough food for at least 2 years. Wow. That's a long time, 2 years, but the reason for this law was very, very simple. The reason was that there was no need for our city to surrender within the first 2 years of a siege. And that was a long time for the attackers too. They needed food as well. And food in those days, it means nothing else but grain, wheat. Only rich persons, they had to store salt as well. But we couldn't ask normal people to store salt, because salt was too expensive and precious. Salt was so expensive, it was even used as a second currency. And you could pay with salt in those days. But don't try that in the ice cream shops tomorrow. It's definitely not working anymore. But you still can hear it in the English language how expensive the salt was. Well, we know the word salary for payment, you get your salary. And the origin of this word is the Latin word sal, and that means salt. Or in German we call expensive things salted prices. So you can imagine how expensive the salt was. And salt, by the way, it was just so expensive because it was the only way to preserve food. So it was not about a little bit of salt, they needed to spice their food. And why were people storing all their food upstairs in the attic of their house? They had two very good reasons. First of all, it was dry, so it wouldn't molder. And the second reason was it was away from
thieves? Question mark?
The mice and the rats. Well, please.